Okay, well, we've already kind of done the introduction, so I'll just get going into the presentation. Striped bass in the Tar River. Generally, we see the striped bass in the Tar River stay in the Tar River, Pamlico River, and into the Pamlico Sound. We don't have a whole lot of out-migrating fish into the Atlantic Ocean from the Tar River. And then in the early spring to mid-spring, we see these fish moving upriver between Rocky Mount and Tarboro when they're making their annual spawning run. And the important thing to note about the Tar River population, as well as the Neuse River populations and the Cape Fear for that matter, is that they are supported by stockings of 100,000 annual stockings plus or minus every year. And those are phase 2 fish, which means they're about 6 to 8 inches. So each one of these rivers gets about 100,000 every year if everything goes according to plan. The fish that are stocked in the in the Tar River, Pamlico River, are stocked around Dinah's Landing. And just kind of to give you a feel for how many fish we've stocked since we started stocking, about 4.3 million striped bass have been stocked in these waters right out here outside the office since about 1983. Some of those have been phase 1 fingerlings, which are about 2 to 3 inches long, but a lot of them, about half of them, a little more than half of them actually, have been those phase 2 fish. So it's a lot of fish to be putting in the water, and we're happy to do it. Important thing about our program, in 2010 we started genetic tagging our fish, and what that means is you can see the large female and the 3 males in this brood tank. They are fin clipped, and their genetics are evaluated and recorded and cataloged. And from that, we can trace back the genetics of all hatchery fish, not only to the hatchery, but also to which male and which female it came back from. So to kind of overly simplified, it's kind of a paternity test of sorts. So when we get a fish on the spawning grounds, or a fish anywhere for that matter, we can take a fin clip and we can know definitively whether or not it was a hatchery fish. And this was a game changer for us. We're kind of leading the pack in striped bass management with this technique because it's definitive. You know, before we were using tags and other marks that fade or fall out, but this, the genetics of the fish never changes. So that's been able to really allow us to have some much more conclusive answers to some of our management questions. So striped bass are a unique fish because they're one of the fish in North Carolina that are managed jointly through the Wildlife Resources Commission and the Division of Marine Fisheries. That management plan is formalized in a fisheries management plan, of which we work together with both agencies to develop. And in that plan, we talk about the management of the fish, but also the duties that each agency has. The recreational harvest regulations are established by each agency. So we have our inland jurisdictional regulations, and then Division of Marine Fisheries has their regulations. Sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're a little different depending on the body of water and the agency plans. As far as commercial harvest, there's no commercial harvest in inland waters, but there is 25,000 pounds of commercial harvest, and that's divided across the Tar, Neuse, and Pamlico Sound, and that harvest is monitored by the Division of Marine Fisheries. Our biggest influx of data in this process is our annual spring electrofishing surveys. As I said before, the spawning grounds are between Rocky Mount and Tarboro, so that's the area that we do our electrofishing surveys. And from those surveys, we get relative abundance, so how many fish are there, size and age structure, how big are they, how old are they. We just talked about hatchery contribution. That's something we're very interested in, so we've been collecting fin clips. And also we have a creel survey where we interview anglers, and that's done in conjunction with DMF to get an accurate estimate of how many fish are being harvested. So just to kind of give you a look at, I'm not going to get too data heavy, but just a couple graphs to show you what the striped bass population looks like. You see, we have most of the fish we have are between 14 and maybe 25 inches, and we do have a few. And when I say few, I mean 3 older fish between 33 and 34 inches. Those fish are the older fish, the larger fish, and those are the fish that we'd like to see more of, going into the future. Those are the large fish are the ones that are going to be paramount in recovering the population. Now this chart, there's a lot going on here, so bear with me for just a second and let me describe what's going on. The white bars are fish that have no genetic record, so we can't trace them back to the hatchery. It means one of two things, or one of a few things really, but it means that one, they're too old for our genetic database. It could mean that they are a wild produced fish, or it could mean they're a fish from somewhere else that got lost and came into our waters. The colored bars represent hatchery fish that we can trace back to the hatchery. And you can also see color coded, that also shows the age of the fish. So you can see that we have fish from age 1 to age 5. We know we have fish up to about age 6 in the tar from some of our other data, but obviously there's not a whole lot of older fish. And this is concerning for 2 reasons. One reason is, striped bass are known to live 20 plus years. So if we're seeing fish drop out at age 5, that raises some significant concerns about their mortality. From our work on the noose, we know that natural mortality likely isn't very high, so fish dying from natural causes, diseases, other fish eating them, birds, anything that they would die of naturally, that seems to be pretty low and right within the realm that's natural and typical for the species. So we are seeing fish falling out of the fishery before they're reaching the ability to really start to contribute heavily to the fishery. The other thing we see in this chart is that just about all of the fish in this fishery are hatchery fish. So a few years ago we thought that our stockings were contributing minimally. When the genetics program started to flush out, we realized that we are contributing almost 90% or better. It is likely that as the years progress, those white bars in the far end, kind of from 23 to 29 inches, 28 inches, that those fish are hatchery fish. There's no reason to assume they aren't, given the fact that all the ones in front of them are. They're just too old. So in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see those bars fill out, and in all likelihood, they'll be hatchery fish as well. So the current status of the fishery is that the Tar River striped bass population is being sustained by our hatchery stocking efforts, and there's little to no evidence of natural recruitment. So we're not seeing a lot of small wild produced fish in the fishery right now. Also, these analyses suggest that fish are being rapidly removed from the Tar River, the Pamlico Sound, because we're not seeing fish over age 5. So something's cropping them off before they're reaching these older ages. And the high mortality is one of the prime things we think is limiting the recovery efforts of striped bass in the Tar River. As a result of these findings, again, the genetics program was groundbreaking for us. As a result of these findings and a public interest in the high mortality rates, we have accelerated our fishery management plan schedule, and that will start with this fall. Actually, this month, we're going to start having meetings with Division of Marine Fisheries to talk about a stock assessment. And some of the goals through that process are to establish what are our management objectives. We want to have a formal stock assessment. We also are going to review our stocking strategies, make sure that we're getting what we need to out of our stocking plan. And also we're going to identify what are the other research needs or gaps in knowledge we need to assess the striped bass. As far as our management scenarios that we could have, our goal is a self-sustaining population, i.e. we would love to put ourselves out of business stocking. We'd like to move on and stock something else. And we would like these fish that we stock to take over and start reproducing and producing recruits that are wild. Another option, and what we are currently in, whether we like it or not right now, is a put, grow, and take fishery, where we put fish in the water, they grow, and then they're taken out by recreational and commercial anglers. Another option would be that, okay, our stocking plans are not working. We're not recovering the fishery, so we abandon ship. And that's not a very popular plan for anybody, because that would basically mean the end of the striped bass fishery in the Neuse, in the Tar, and the Neuse River for that matter. So that's not a popular option, but that would explain what's going on. If nothing changes and we quit stocking within about 5 to 6 years, a striped bass would be a very rare fish in the Neuse River, or Tar River, excuse me. What we are doing right now is we are proposing, and this will come up in our upcoming public hearings in January, 2 fish per day, 26-inch minimum size limit for the Tar and the Neuse River, and then the same season that's been the last few years also. Our plan to get this out there, and we've received a lot of positive support for this. A lot of the anglers, a lot of the public are very concerned with the striped bass population and want to see us protect them more. But we're going to reach out and meet with many anglers and many of the local conservation groups and talk with them about this, tell them what's going on. But the intent of this is to preserve the striped bass and promote a self-sustaining population in the Tar and the Neuse River. But this alone will not, fix all our problems. It definitely needs to be part of a larger plan to reduce mortality, in the entire system. And then with that, I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I'll open it up to questions. So.
Commissioners have any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
It looks like with the proposed limits of 2 26-inch fish per day, that you're trying to open this thing up enough to make sure that it's not, what you're putting in is not being overfished.
Sure. Yes,
That's
we
what it
definitely.
looks like. Is that the goal?
Yes, that's a more conservative regulation than what we have now. So, like I said, that will be to reduce the mortality. Right now, they are overfished, and we want to kind of tone it back a little bit as far as the harvest goes.
Do you have the capability for stocking more fingerlings?
Right now, we are about at capacity. Certain years, and the fish, I didn't mention this, the fish are grown at the Edenton National Fish Hatchery. They do a really good job. I want to give them credit. Certain years we can stock a few more, but it would be hard to stock double under our current plan. Sometimes we get a couple good fish and we produce a lot of fish, and we could stock more. And one of the other things that we've done is stock fry or smaller fish that were extra or surplus, or were used to answer some other questions as well. So.
Commissioner Brand?
You said earlier that, in fact, I got 2 questions. You said earlier that that the fish that we find in the river now are around 5 years old.
Up to 5 or 6 years old,
And
yes, sir.
do you have any reasons why they aren't living any longer than what they are?
Well, they're being removed from the fishery. So like we talked about a second ago, harvest is very high. The mortality rates are very high, and it's.
But you're not seeing any fish kills or anything like that?
No, I mean we do have fish kills, as everybody knows, but the fish kills don't seem to be driving what we're seeing. And even in the few fish kills we see, we don't see big older fish. So there's something else going on that we need to work with Division of Marine Fisheries as part of the FMP plan, so that we can kind of make things better for everybody involved. So.
One other thing, you had, when you had that slide up a couple of things back, that right there.
Okay.
You said that those no-tagged fish
Yes, sir.
are white.
Right.
What is the deal with the blue tag and the orange or yellow tag on top of the no tag?
Okay. I should have probably made it a little better. It's no problem. The different colors represent different age classes. So just say the 22-inch bar, which has several different age classes. The little green at the very top,
Right.
a small proportion of 22-inch fish are age 3. So those are pretty fast-growing fish. A large proportion of those fish are age 4, and then a smaller proportion are age 5. So that's what the color code demarks.
Right.
Anything further? All right, thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you guys for having me.